All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're kicking off a whole series on fats, and we're starting with a story that is just wild. It begins with some of the smartest animals in the ocean, and it ends with the discovery that might just flip decades of nutritional advice on its head. It is a true scientific detective story, all about one tiny, overlooked molecule.
So, picture this. The U.S. Navy has this amazing program where they train bottlenose dolphins for really critical missions. These animals get the best care imaginable, but scientists started noticing something really strange, a paradox. Even though they were all living in the same place, eating pretty much the same food, some dolphins were aging gracefully, while others were getting all sorts of chronic diseases. So, what was their secret?
Well, the hunt to solve that mystery led to a breakthrough that nobody saw coming. And it wasn't about exercise or some obvious genetic thing. Nope, the answer was actually hidden in their blood, and it points to a very specific type of fat, one that, ironically, many of us have been trying to avoid for years.
Okay, first, let's really dig into this dolphin paradox. What was actually going on? So these Navy dolphins are the special forces of the ocean, right? And they live incredibly long lives because of the amazing care they get. But here's where it gets weird. As they got older, a huge split started to appear. One group started getting sick with the exact same kinds of diseases that affect aging humans. We're talking high cholesterol, fatty liver disease, even brain changes that looked a lot like Alzheimer's. And yet their neighbors, living right there with them, were totally fine, thriving, healthy, active, well into their 40s and 50s. The big question was, why?
This puzzle eventually landed on the desk of a brilliant veterinary epidemiologist. And that brings us to the next chapter, a scientist's discovery.
In comes Dr. Stephanie Venn-Watson. She decides to take this on, and she had access to an absolute goldmine of data, decades worth of blood samples that have been collected from these dolphins their entire lives. She and her team started this massive, meticulous search for a molecular needle in a haystack, that one single thing that could explain the difference between the healthy dolphins and the sick ones.
And they found it, a single molecule, C15:0. The healthy, long-living dolphins, they consistently had higher levels of this specific fatty acid in their blood. This was the clue that was about to blow the whole mystery wide open.
So what in the world is C15:0? Okay, its full name is Pentadecanoic Acid. And here is the real shocker. It's an odd-chain saturated fat. Yes, you heard me right, saturated. The type of fat we've been told for decades is the bad guy, and you find it mainly in things like whole milk, butter, and some types of fish. I mean, this discovery went against everything we thought we knew.
Finding out C15 was key for dolphins was one thing, but it immediately kicked off a much bigger, much more intense debate in the world of human nutrition.
You see, for a nutrient to get the title essential fatty acid, it's a really big deal. It has to pass this incredibly strict 5-point scientific test. First, not having enough of it has to be linked to some kind of disease. Second, our bodies can't make enough of it themselves. Third, your levels have to depend on what you eat. Fourth, if you add it back into your diet, the problem gets better. And finally, your body should be able to turn it into something else that's also beneficial. That's a tough list to get through.
So based on all their research, Dr. Venn-Watson and her team are making a pretty historic claim. They're arguing that C15:0 checks all 5 of those boxes, which would make it the first new essential fatty acid to be identified in over 90 years. I mean, think about that. The last one was omega-3s way back in 1929.
But you know how it goes with any huge scientific claim, there's always a debate. So on one side, you have the proponents who say that low levels of C15:0 lead to something they've called cellular fragility syndrome, which they say speeds up aging. Then on the other side, you have skeptics. They point out that major groups, like the National Academies of Science, haven't given it their official stamp of approval yet. They also note that the term cellular fragility syndrome was actually created by the company that now makes a C15:0 supplement. So the science is definitely still evolving on this.
Okay, so let's put the debate on hold for a second. Let's just look at what the science says C15:0 is actually doing inside our bodies. How does this stuff work?
And this brings us to what might be the most important takeaway here. Not all saturated fats are the same. It turns out we have to separate them into 2 camps, odd chain and even chain. The even chain ones, like palmitic acid, those are the ones linked to inflammation and other problems. But the odd chain fats, like our friend C15:0, seem to be a totally different story. Studies show they can actually be anti-inflammatory and work as antioxidant.
The reason why is all about its shape. C15:0 as a saturated fat
has this straight, stable structure. And the best way to visualize it is to think of it like a really sturdy, perfect brick. It actually gets built right into the walls of our cells, our cell membranes, making them stronger and more solid from the ground up.
So having that sturdier cell wall has some huge effects. It makes our cells tougher, more resilient. It helps them fight off damage from those nasty free radicals, a process called lipid peroxidation. It also acts like a shield for our mitochondria, which are the little powerhouses that keep our cells running. And some studies even show it can prevent a specific kind of cell death called ferroposis that's tied to aging.
But the story doesn't even stop there. Just when you think you've got it figured out, there's another layer to the C15 discovery that is just as cool.
Yeah, it turns out C15O isn't just a brick for your cells. Our bodies are incredible chemists. They actually take C15O and use it as a raw material to create a whole other powerful compound that has its own incredible benefits. And that compound is called pentadecanoic carnitine. Let's just call it PDC. And get this, researchers have discovered that PDC is a fully acting endocannabinoid. That means it works with the very same system in our body that cannabis does, except it's something our body makes all by itself from a simple fat in our food.
And this is a really big deal. This PDC molecule can fully light up the CB1 and CB2 receptors, which are the main switches in our endocannabinoid system. And that system is like a master regulator for our whole body. It helps control pretty much everything from our mood and how well we sleep to even how we experience comfort and pain.
Okay, wow. So we went from Navy dolphins to cell walls to endocannabinoids. It's a lot, I know. So let's bring it all back. What's the practical takeaway for you?
So where do we actually find this stuff? Well, this chart lays it out pretty clearly. The main sources are full-fat dairy products. You can see right here, a cup of whole milk, a tablespoon of butter, an ounce of full-fat cheese. They all give you a pretty decent dose. This could totally change how we think about these foods, which have kind of been villainized for a long time because of that saturated fat label. This quote from Dr. Venn-Watson, the scientist who started this whole journey, really just says it all, doesn't it? The story of C15 is a powerful reminder that we need to look closer and have a more nuanced view of nutrition, instead of just making blanket rules about entire food groups.
So, we end right here with this one big question. The wild journey from a dolphin paradox to our dinner plate has revealed what might be a forgotten essential nutrient. And while the science is still unfolding, it raises a really fascinating possibility. Could one of the keys to healthy aging have been sitting in our dairy aisle all along?